Hey everyone, Dave Dr. Shock Becker here with another YouTube video. This one, I'm going to be looking at, the 2020 Oscars are coming up. And voting is, I guess, going on as we speak. And this video, it's actually one of two. It's going to be a two-parter. Both are going to post before the ceremony, which is Sunday, February 9th, I believe. And this, it's like I said, two-parter. And what I'm going to be doing is, it's if I had the vote, if I could vote for the Oscars, which movies, which actors, which actresses, so forth, would I pick? Now, I'm not going to be getting into the technical categories, including cinematography and editing. This is just mostly for the acting and the various, pictures, documentary, animated, and so forth. Two, I'm not trying to predict. I'm not going to try to predict what Oscar is going to do. That's, a lot of people do it. Some things are obvious. Some things are, a toss-up. I'm not interested in predicting. This is just, if I could vote, what would I vote for the Oscars? And I did do some, I put together some visual aids here, so you don't have to just sit here listening to me yammer on. I do have notes, so if you hear some papers rustling in the background, that's why. For some of the categories, I took notes on, where they're set, the year, the director, not the year, obviously the years are the same, the directors, maybe a quick synopsis just to sort of remind myself. Some of these I've seen a while ago. All right, anyway, let's get started. And our first category is, Best Documentary. And the nominees are American Factory, The Cave, The Edge of Democracy, For Sama, and Honeyland. Starting with American Factory, it's about a Chinese billionaire who buys and reopens an abandoned auto factory in Ohio, hiring American workers to run it. It starts off pretty well, but soon the cultural differences, take over, and there's talk of a union among the workers, and that causes a major rift between the managers, the owners, and the workers. I liked this movie. I did. I thought it was good. It's on Netflix, I want to say, and it is very interesting, especially when they go over to China and you see the differences in the workers there. And I mean, there are workers in the factory for this company in China who say they get 2 days off a month or something like that. Whereas in America, obviously, it's much different. Next is The Cave. This is about a Syrian pediatrician who was also running this underground hospital in the war-torn city of Ghouta, Syria. She's doing her best to help the injured. There's bombings every day, and as a result, the injured are brought into the hospital. And she's also forced to deal with the sexist attitude of some of the patients who come in. The fact that she's a woman running this hospital. Not too many people like that. This was directed by Faris Fayyad. This is sort of a follow-up to his excellent Last Men in Aleppo from 2017. And this is just as gripping as that movie, I think. The Edge of Democracy. This is a Netflix documentary directed by Petra Costa. And it's about the downfall of two of Brazil's democratically elected presidents. But it's also a personal memoir of her own family and how several generations of it found themselves on opposite sides of the struggle to maintain the already fragile democratic process. It's extremely well made. It's engrossing, and I really do recommend it. I was it's 2 hours, but it flew by. I really liked The Edge of Democracy. For Sama, this one devastated me. It's co-directed by Wad Al-Khatib, who also personally shot most of the footage. This is also about a hospital. Like The Cave, it's about a hospital in war-torn Syria, this time in Aleppo. And the main thrust of it is that it's a documentary designed to show Al-Khatib's infant daughter, Sama, why she and her husband remained in Aleppo, putting themselves and their daughter in harm's way pretty much every single second of the day. And like The Cave, there's a lot of gruesome imagery. We see firsthand the violence inflicted on these people by the bombings, many of whom are children. But the movie is even more gripping as a personal drama because Al-Khatib who's a journalist, and her husband Hamza, who's a doctor, were members of the resistance that fought for Syria's independence, which means they're being hunted and, their lives are over if they're caught and captured and identified. This one affected me more than any other documentary this year. I mean, it really is very powerful. Sorry if I'm moving here, but like I said, I do have some notes. Honeyland. This is a Macedonian documentary about a female beekeeper and how she has to cope with her new neighbors, who want to copy the success she's had as a beekeeper, but whose carelessness ultimately threatens her livelihood. This was shot over the course of 3 years, with the filmmakers gathering hundreds of hours of footage. There's nothing along the lines of narration. We're kind of thrust into this setting, this situation. And that stylistic choice goes a long way in pulling us into the world. It's a great movie. It's also up for Best International Film. And in any other year, this would be my choice for Best Documentary. But I'm going with For Sama. That's my selection, because it really shook me. And my guess is this is probably the only one of these 5 that are going to make my top 20 of the year once all is said and done. That said, there are some other notable titles, documentaries to discuss. Apollo 11 takes us deeper into the July 1969 moon landing. We get the famous footage, that we've seen hundreds of times before, the countdown and liftoff of Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong's "One Small Step for Man" quote as he sets foot on the moon for the first time. But this gives us a lot more besides, with, the conversations between the astronauts and mission control as they made the journey to and from the moon. It gives us an idea of how many hundreds of people it took on a daily basis to make this amazing accomplishment a reality. It's really something, and it's well worth a watch. And then there's Maiden. This is an uplifting documentary about Tracy Edwards and how she assembled the first ever all-female crew to sail in the Whitbread Round the World Yacht Race back in 1989. And the race takes its competitors on a 33,000-mile, several months-long journey to practically every continent. As I said, it's really an uplifting documentary, and you root like hell for this amazing group of ladies from start to finish. You really do. And then One Child Nation. Nanfu Wang, she's a Chinese-born filmmaker living in America, returns home to document China's one-child policy, which was enforced for decades, and shows the extremes that some families went through to adhere to this policy. It's eye-opening, it's expertly made, and I was actually surprised this one wasn't nominated for Best Documentary. I mean, early buzz was that it was a front-runner. And I think that, like Best Picture, they probably should open up some of these other categories to more than just 5 nominations. Had they done that, then these 8 would have been, I would have nominated all 8 of these movies. Next up, Best Supporting Actor. Now, crossed off is Tom Hanks in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I did not see that movie. All right, so I only saw 4 of the 5 nominees this year. And it was Al Pacino in The Irishman, Joe Pesci in The Irishman, Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Anthony Hopkins in The Two Popes. The 2 for The Irishman, I guess, sort of cancel themselves out. Joe Pesci was excellent. He's not playing his normal Scorsese-type character in this one. He's more along the lines of a Don Corleone than he is, his sort of... the wise guy, loudmouth that he's played before, and he's excellent in it. He really is. But Al Pacino as Jimmy Hoffa, he steals a lot of scenes in that movie. Just an extraordinary performance. Anthony Hopkins was good in The Two Popes. I enjoyed The Two Popes for what it was. And that's about the sort of retirement of Pope Benedict and the turning the power over to Pope Francis. But my pick would be Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. My 2 favorite sequences have Brad Pitt in them. One is a meeting with Bruce Lee, and then another is when he pays a visit to the famous former movie set, or it's sort of a movie location for Westerns, where Charles Manson and his followers had holed up. That and the ending. I mean, the ending is amazing, and Brad Pitt plays a big part in that as well. I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I think Brad Pitt would be my choice of these 5 men. Again, not having seen Tom Hanks, but Brad Pitt would be my choice. Other notables, Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse. He was just great. He really was playing this grizzled old captain. Somebody you'd expect to see in like SpongeBob or Treasure Island or something, talking that way, but yet he really does bring him to life. It's more than a cartoon character. And just now, Alan Alda had his 84th birthday not too long ago. And I thought he was great in Marriage Story as the sort of mild-mannered lawyer of Adam Driver, going up against a much, I guess, a much more cutthroat lawyer. And he did a great job in this as well, Alan Alda. So those are just other two performances. I don't know that I would have replaced any of the nominees with them, but I just thought I wanted to mention them because I thought those were two good supporting performances as well. All right, we have Best Supporting Actress, and again, unfortunately, I did not see all of these movies. I did not see Richard Jewell and Kathy Bates. Kathy Bates is a great actress. I'm sure it's a deserving nomination. She was awesome in Misery. She was great in About Schmidt and so many other movies. So I have no problem, believing that this was a worthy nominee. So who were the nominees? Margot Robbie for Bombshell, Scarlett Johansson for Jojo Rabbit, Florence Pugh for Little Women, and Laura Dern for Marriage Story. Margot Robbie and Scarlett Johansson were both excellent, deserving nominations. You know what? My heart would be with Florence Pugh for Little Women because she was also great in Midsommar this year. It's been a good year for her, and I'd love to. I don't know. I'm kind of rooting for her. If she wins, I would not be unhappy, but my vote would go with Laura Dern in Marriage Story. It's a tremendous turn as that cutthroat lawyer who goes up against Alan Alda's character and gets Scarlett Johansson, sort of takes what could have been an amicable split up and makes it something else besides. Laura Dern would get my vote. Only one other that I just wanted to mention. It's Zhao Shuzhen in The Farewell. She played the grandmother. Really strong turn there. And that's another one that she could have been nominated as well. All right, so that's Best Supporting Actress. All right, next we have Best Animated Film. And hold on, I'm sorry, I got some notes here. This is actually a category I've struggled with over the years because there have been so many great animated films geared towards an adult audience as opposed to just kids that have been overlooked. Persepolis should have won in 2008. I mean, I liked Ratatouille, which did win, but Persepolis was something special. And the same a year later in 2009 with Waltz with Bashir, which was nominated for Best Foreign Film, but not Best Animated Film. And there were only 3 animated nominees that year: Kung Fu Panda, Disney's Bolt, and the eventual winner, Pixar's WALL-E. Again, I liked WALL-E. I really did. WALL-E's a great movie. But Waltz with Bashir should have at least been nominated. And even when they do nominate a movie for the entire family that's challenging and beautifully made, they did that a few years ago, Kubo and the Two Strings. The winner is usually the kids-oriented movie. In that case, it was Zootopia. I liked Zootopia, but I loved Kubo and the Two Strings. They do sometimes get it right. I mean, Miyazaki's Spirited Away, which in my mind is the greatest animated movie of all time, won the second ever Best Animated Feature in 2003. But still, I sometimes think they should just call this the category of, they should call the category Best Family Film or Best Children's Film, because even when they do nominate a more mature-minded picture, like they did this year again, you pretty much know up front it doesn't have a chance of winning. Anyway, the nominees. How to Train Your Dragon: Hidden World. I was at a disadvantage in that I hadn't seen the 2 previous films in the series, or any of the previous films. I think it was just 2. Yet I have to say I did like this movie, and if you've seen the others, I'm guessing you'll probably love it. It's a great way that they tied up the entire series. I Lost My Body. This is the adult-oriented nominee I mentioned earlier. It's a French-produced animation movie about a young man trying to find love while in a separate storyline, a severed hand is traversing the city streets searching for its owner. It's a challenging movie with some harsh imagery, but it fits in perfectly with the tone I think that that the filmmakers established, and I highly recommend you check this out. It's streaming on Netflix in the U.S. Claus. This one is a treat. It's a unique take on the backstory of Santa Claus. It has voices of Jason Schwartzman, J.K. Simmons, and Rashida Jones, providing the three main characters, the voices for the three main characters. It was funny, touching, and I think it should become a staple that you watch during the holiday season. I think it's going to become one for me. I really, really enjoyed this one. Missing Link. This is another endearing animated feature about an explorer trying to prove himself to his more experienced peers by tracking down the elusive Bigfoot monster, who it turns out is anything but monstrous. It's a lot of fun, and like Claus, it's a movie that the entire family can enjoy. And then Toy Story 4. I was initially angry when I heard they were making Toy Story 4 because I thought the third installment was the perfect ending to the series. It really was. It just tied everything up beautifully. This felt like a cash grab, but I gotta say, they came up with a great idea here, and they executed it well. It's as funny and touching as the previous Toy Story movie. So kudos to Pixar. Even if it was just a cash grab, they did make it something a little more special than that. All right, other notable titles. Buñuel and the Labyrinth of the Turtles. This is one for film fans. It's an animated telling of the famed director Louis Buñuel's attempt to make a socially relevant documentary, which became 1933's Las Herdes, and was his third film after L'Âge d'Or and Un Chien Andalou, both of which he made with Salvador Dali. This movie here. It's an animated behind-the-scenes expose of the chaos that Buñuel causes and how he unwittingly tormented his friend and investor Ramon with his out-of-control ego. There are actual clips of Las Herdes edited into this from time to time, and we get a sense of just how driven Buñuel was to get this movie made. I really recommend this one, especially if you're a fan of film. Oko's Inn. Even though it deals with some serious issues, chief among them death, Oko's Inn it's a lighthearted fantasy. It's a Japanese animated film about a young girl who, aided by several ghosts, is trying to learn the hotel business, assisting her grandmother, who she, I guess, eventually is going to take over for. It's for kids, but it's also quite moving at times. I really liked it, and again, another movie I think the whole family can watch. And then This Magnificent Cake. This is a stop-motion Belgian animated film. It tells a few interlocking stories at once, all set in the late 19th century and mostly centering on a Belgian colony in the Congo. It's definitely unique. It is a bit dry at times, but at 47 minutes, it's not a major investment of time, and it does have its moments. So those are the animated films. If they had increased it to 8, those would have been my 3 additional nominees. Moving right along to Best Actress. We have Charlize Theron for Bombshell, Cynthia Erivo for Harriet, Renee Zellweger for Judy, Saoirse Ronan for Little Women, and Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, I did not mention it. My choice for the winner of animated film would be I Lost My Body, just because I want to see something different that sort of film win. But I do have a special place in my heart for both Claus and Missing Link. I really do. And I would not be unhappy if either of them won it. And now back to Best Actress. Charlize Theron was excellent in Bombshell. Cynthia Erivo was great as the lead in Harriet. That's about Harriet Tubman. And it really is a lot of these biopics that Hollywood turns out, they can be hit and miss. But because the subject of this one was so special, Harriet Tubman, and what she did so amazing, it really is, it's a crowd pleaser. And I liked Harriet. I really did. I thought it was great. For me, the one to beat, though, is Renee Zellweger in Judy. She embodies Judy Garland perfectly. She really does. I think she's the one to beat, and she would get my vote. Renee Zellweger. Renee Zellweger would get my vote for Best Actress. She really would, and I think she's going to win. There could be an upset, but that's who I would vote for, Renee Zellweger. I do feel bad for Saoirse Ronan. She's always nominated, and she's always great in these films. But there's always someone just a little bit better. I know she was nominated for Brooklyn a few years ago, Lady Bird, and she's a great actress. And I think she'll get her due at some point. And she was excellent in Little Women. She really was. As was Scarlett Johansson in Marriage Story. You know, the other side of the you know, I guess the couple getting going through a breakup, and Scarlett Johansson was phenomenal in that part. You know, she got 2 nominations this year, and both are deserving. But yeah, it'd be Renee Zellweger for me. Now here, instead of other notables, I put Who Got Robbed, because I think 2 people got robbed, 2 actresses. Awkwafina in The Farewell, she was excellent, and she actually won a Golden Globe, but did not even get an Oscar nomination. And of course, Lupita Nyong'o in Us. Extraordinary performance. I know she's won the Oscar before for 12 Years a Slave, but she should have been nominated for Us. It was such a great performance. She was phenomenal in it. She really was. And it was, both of them got robbed. Both of them should have been nominated. I don't know, again, who I would replace of these 5, but both of them should have gotten nominations. All right, well, that ends part 1. Coming up in part 2. Coming up in, look at my Leonard Skinner shirt there. Coming up in part 2, I'm going to be taking a look at some of the other categories: screenplay, actor, and Best International Film, and of course, the big one, Best Picture. Please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you have not already. And I'll see you again soon.